Greetings, everyone. This is Jeff Wilkerson, professor of physics at Luther College, bringing you the next in the series of what to look for in the night sky. This week we're talking about the week of April 25th, 2022. So at the end of last week, we talked about, at the end of the week, the moon might be moving into the planets. We looked at the planets in the morning sky. There's a lot out there about the planets right now. A lot of people calling what we're seeing here rare. I don't know if I would call it rare. But it would, it's happened plenty of times in my lifetime, and I'm not that old. So it turns out that, it's still a special sight where we have the planets lining up in the morning sky. When you go out now, just before dawn, you'll see Saturn over here, the furthest west of the planets, and then Mars, and then the brightest of them, Venus, and then Jupiter. Now, Jupiter's still... You're going to have to work a little bit to dig Jupiter out of the glow of the sun here. So you go out a little bit earlier in the morning before the sun glow has had a chance to really overtake the morning sky, and you got a better chance to see Mars and Saturn. Venus will shine throughout. It's so bright. You don't have any trouble finding Venus. It's the brightest object. You're looking east in the morning sky. It's the brightest object you're going to see. Jupiter's pretty bright. Binoculars will help you. But you have to wait a little bit for it to get up into the sky in order to see it. The sky will be starting to brighten just a little bit from the approaching sunrise, and so you might start to lose Mars and Saturn. So just a little bit of a dance there to think about how you want to go out and how you want to maximize your chance to observe the planets this week. One of the things that makes the planets special this week, the week of the 25th, is the waning crescent moon. And a waning crescent moon, or a waxing crescent moon, always really interesting to watch, where you have a really thin crescent filling out as it gets higher in the sky in the evening, or thinning out as it gets lower in the sky in the morning. And that's what's happening this week, and it's going to move right by these planets. And so this is a great thing to be out there doing. The morning of the 25th, that's Monday morning, so Sunday night, the 24th, into Monday morning, the 25th. So this is Monday morning before sunrise on the 25th. The moon's going to be about 30% full. Pretty close to a third full, more than a quarter full, let's say it that way. Somewhere about halfway between a quarter and a third full. And it's going to sit below Mars and Saturn so that you can make a triangle like this. So that's a great time to go out and observe those objects and look for the other planets too, of course, but watch the moon on the morning of the 25th. If you're fortunate, we have not been that way at all. You've heard me mentioned this a lot in these videos. We've had a pretty cloudy spring, and so we've not been able to count on clear skies. But if you're fortunate to get 3 days in a row, 25th, 26th, and 27th, this will be a really fine thing to track. By the next day, on the 26th, the moon will be down to about 20% full. Still a nice thick crescent moon, but a very impressive moon to see. It's thin enough that it's really starting to take on a special crescent shape. And it makes a triangle now like this with Venus and Mars. So it's moved over from sort of between Mars and Saturn to between Mars and Venus, sitting below all of these. The moon's orbit's tilted about 6 degrees relative to the ecliptic, to the path of the planets and the Earth around the sun. And so it can sit several degrees below the planets like this as it slides past. So that's a nice sort of triangle to see that morning. Now, on this morning, you might use that. So the space between, let's talk about it that way. The space between Venus and Mars is filled with a couple of strings of dim stars. I'm drawing too many stars in there, but a couple of strings of dim stars. That is Aquarius. So one of the themes that we like to talk about here, that we like to return to, is we're going to do two of those themes that we return to frequently in these videos. And the first of those is learning new stars, learning new constellations, things that maybe we don't know. And maybe you're not familiar with the constellation Aquarius. It's not an extraordinarily bright constellation. But the moon, directly below Mars, the moon is just above and directly below Mars and just below and to the right, to the west. So south of Mars, south and west of the moon on this morning of the 26th is the star Scott in Aquarius. Allen, we always refer to star names by Richard Hinckley Allen. That's our go-to to try to understand the etymology, the history of the names of these stars. He suggests that it comes from one of these Arabic words the shin bone or a wish, most likely here. A lot of other writers that I've seen tend to think Alsect, the shin bone, is probably, given its location in the constellation, in the pattern, is probably the origin of that name. So anyway, it was bothering me seeing all of those stars in there. Just know there's a couple of strands of stars that stretch down through there. This is a great morning to go out. It's about a third magnitude star. That's another thing we talk about all the time. Stars, the magnitudes count backward. Every step in magnitude is a factor, a multiplicative factor of 2.5. And so a really bright star, good bright stars are 0th magnitude, 1st magnitude. Second magnitude's a pretty bright star. By the time you get down to 3rd magnitude, certainly visible, easily visible stars, but not bright. And so you might have to work a little bit to pull this out, but the moon and Mars are really going to help you find that. If you want to find it, it's low enough on the horizon, low enough south for those of us who are as far north as I am, that you're going to have you're going to have some obscuration from the atmosphere that far to the south. This is something that's probably easier done a little bit before sunrise. Don't be waiting to see Jupiter clear the horizon if you want to go out and find that. Go out and find that star, then wait for Jupiter to clear the horizon and enjoy the rest of the view of the morning. So that's what we got on the 26th. Remember, the moon is doing what it does. It's sliding easterly against the background stars here day to day. By the next morning, these are mornings now, the night of the 25th, morning of the 26th. By the 27th, that's Wednesday morning, the moon will have moved all the way over underneath Jupiter, and it'll be just barely over 10% full. So a really thin crescent moon. If by the next day, the moon's 5 or 6% full, and then you're going to have a little bit of trouble seeing it maybe. And so it's great exercise to go out and try to find that very thin crescent moon on the morning of the 28th over here. The 27th is the last morning, then it's got to be really probably pretty easy to see out of the glow of the sun. And it'll be just below, just south, and to the east now of Jupiter a little bit, and that'll help you find Jupiter. Take your binoculars again if you want to try to dig this out. So that's what we got. We got the moon moving that direction, waning and passing by all of this wonderful line of planets. Neptune is right there. Venus and Neptune are right on top of each other. So if you've got a telescope, you can't see Neptune without a telescope. But if you've got a telescope and you want to go try to find Neptune in there too, by all means, take your small telescope and poke around there and have a chance. This is one of your better chances to find Neptune because Venus is so close to it. And so you can go in, you find Venus and poke around there, and I think you'll probably have a chance to see Neptune shining right there. Last couple of ideas. We often talk about the circlet of Pisces. And the circlet of Pisces is sitting right above Jupiter and Venus right now. So also not terribly bright stars. Pisces is also a medium bright constellation, not terribly bright constellation. So the circlet sits here below the Great Square of Pegasus. So we've talked about the Great Square of Pegasus in these videos quite a bit. It's a bright asterism in the sky, a really great asterism to view. It's an asterism that I make the mistake of thinking of as being a marker of fall. I think of this as particularly a fall pattern. It's just the prototypical fall pattern of stars right there. And that's because in the fall, come September, when I'm outside with my astronomy class and we're doing observing of the night sky, we're looking at the constellations, this is going to be rising big and bright into the evening sky. So really in the fall, in September and October, this is hanging high as it gets dark in the evening. And that's when most people probably go out and look at the skies in the evening, not in the early morning like this. But because the Earth's rotating, in addition to orbiting, as it rotates, new stars are coming into view all night long. And here in the spring, you could, by early morning, you can start to see the fall stars crawling across the eastern horizon. That's one of the other themes we like to refer back to, is thinking about that motion of the Earth and thinking about how stars that we associate with one season often can be seen in other seasons because of our rotation like that, how much sky we actually see in one night. And this is a great example of that. The star that's right here, that I just marked it for no apparent reason. That star is actually technically in the Great Square of Pegasus. That star is actually in Andromeda. We've talked about that before. Andromeda is off this direction. More about that at another time as this becomes less of an early morning object. So Algenib we marked here as the bottom of the square closest to these planets right now. It gets translated according to Alan as the side. Most likely is where that came from, the Arabic origin of that word. And that's what we got this week. Go out for sure if you get a chance, it's worth getting up early to watch the waning crescent moon move past Saturn, Mars, Venus, and Jupiter. If you got a telescope, go dig Neptune out right next to Venus. Look for the stars of Aquarius stretching down. Any stars you see stretching down between Venus and Mars, they're in Aquarius. And so you've made your observation of Aquarius, in particular with the moon very close to Scott on the 26th, the early morning of the 26th. Use that opportunity to make sure you can identify that star. And then above Jupiter and Venus, look for this circlet of Pisces and get to know Pisces. And then appreciate the fact that our autumn constellation, our autumn asterism of the Great Square of Pegasus is climbing into the sky here in April. And so here, as far away from autumn as we can get. Hope you have a great week, everybody. As always, thanks for watching, and hopefully you can see some of the activity of the planets in the coming week. Take care.